Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining. Welcome to ClearTech Loop, in the know, on the move. I'm Joe Peterson. I am the Chief Analyst at ClearTech Research, and I'm here today with Scott Howitt, founder of SVH Cyber and a former CISO. Hi, Scott.
Hi, good to see you, Joe.
Thank you so much for joining.
No problem. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so guys, a little bit about ClearTech Loop. It's a focused podcast series, and we're delivering sharp, real-time insights at the intersection of cybersecurity, cloud, and AI security. And we're doing short and deep dive interviews, and we're looking for unpacking the risks, realities, and the next big ideas reshaping the tech landscape. And we do this through a concise 3-question lens. So we cut through the noise and we get right to the heart of the matter. In our first 10 episodes, we're focused on CISOs and what they're thinking. So it's a series of conversations with professionals like Scott that are navigating a new era of risk and responsibility. But it's not just about protection. What we're looking for is what they see on the horizon and how they're preparing for it. So let's get right into it with the first question. Scott, from a CISO's perspective, how should you be thinking about cyber risk in terms of dollars and business impact?
Well, I think it's important to note that this is no longer a nice to have skill, but a fundamental requirement for CISOs. So, I think the role has evolved from a purely technical one to more of a strategic business function, really elevating them in the C-suite. And so I think, one of the first things that you have to do is really shift away from that technical jargon and speak the language of the business. Understanding the industry you're in and being able to speak to other C-suite, C-suite people in the organization is really going to help you, navigate the risks of the organization, and listening to them and being able to speak in their terms is really important instead of speaking the alphabet soup that a lot of CISOs like to speak. I think too, you have to be able to quantify the cyber risk in dollars, and you can do that in various and sundry ways. There's lots of frameworks out there. You can use FAIR, you can use ISO, you can use that. But, you can also do simple stuff like from my casino days, you can do Monte Carlo simulations or stuff like that just puts the terms in something that the business really understands. And on that note, if your organization has an ERM program, making yourself a part of that and understanding how to talk to Treasury and working with them on creating those models, I think is super important. And then lastly, being able to put it in terms that the board understands. I think whenever you talk to the board, you always got to look for the person in the room who has that technical expertise, and hopefully they'll help you navigate it along. But you also got to understand there's a lot of people that aren't there for their technical expertise. Maybe they're there for their go-to-market expertise or whatever. And so you really need to tell a story in terms that everybody can understand. And, sometimes I practice my board presentations with my wife and family just to make sure that they were on terms that made sense to them and they understand the risks that we were talking about.
But that's cute that you do that. That's a great idea, by the way, because that audience is just going to tell you in no uncertain terms whether they understood what you were talking about, right? So
I have 3 daughters. They are not shy about telling me when dad is wrong.
Or they can't understand you. Not that you're wrong, but then maybe they just can't understand you. And you make such a valid point with a little humor there that I think that as folks come up through the ranks, they're rated on being good technicians, but not necessarily good storytellers. So where does that break occur, and how do they learn really how to have those conversations? And that is critically important to how they're perceived and how they impact the organization as a CISO.
Yeah, for sure. It is in fact, it's funny when I was, some of my deputy CISOs that I've had, when I told them how I talk to the board, I usually talk to the board 4 times a year, and it's like 3 and 4 chapters. And, it's like, here's what I think the risks are to the business. Here's what I'm going to go do about it. here's my progress on it, and then set myself up for the next year saying, here's how successful those controls were, and here's how I'm thinking about the next year. And then I would just repeat the story over and over again. They understood it. They understood the progression. It was a really easy story to tell.
That's a great way to do it because you're consistent in your messaging, right? And that matters to people, that consistency. So on to the next question. In your opinion, what is the best way to integrate cyber risk into the business's overall financial risk model?
Yeah, I think, again, this is back to, it's key to moving yourself from a cost center to a strategic business enabler. And it really allows the business to make informed decisions about their investments, resource allocations, and risk appetite. So, one of the things is, again, establishing a common framework for the financial quantification. When I worked at again, the casino, I understood materiality and I understood the impact to EBITDA. And so when you understand those two things, it makes it very easy to speak in terms of, hey, here's how we should model this out. I think too, you have access, just like everybody else, to your 10K, and you know what your financial models and KPIs and business metrics look like. You should speak in terms to impact to those. And I think, too often I see CISOs get caught up and they'll use, not to slam Poneman, but they'll say, oh, Poneman says it's $200 per record, so the impact to us is like $3 billion if we got breached. It's like, it's not. So be thoughtful about the framework that you're using and the probability in the impact. People understand that cyber is scary. We can move beyond FUD, put it in real business terms that they understand, using the metrics that they're using and speaking the language that they're using. And understand too, what might have worked when you were in the financial industry might not work if you're now in the manufacturing industry or something like that. So everybody has different business drivers and different business metrics. You should adopt your program to speak a language that makes the most sense to the business.
That is such a good point, because maybe folks know this and maybe they don't, but oftentimes the CISO might report to the CFO. So if you and that person are not speaking the same language, it's going to be really hard to get additional budget.
For sure. And I think the thing is too, even if you don't report to the CFO, that should be a regular meeting on your list, because that person, more than anybody else in the organization, understands your flow of revenue and your flow of expense. And so they're gonna, there was multiple times where I had conversations with the CFO where I was like, hey, I'm really worried about this. And the CFO would tell me, don't worry about this, because I think we got that under control. If this happens, worry about this other thing over here, because I'm not sure we have it under control. And so you really get some insight into the mind of the CFO, who, any CEO always is going to have the CFO as their right-hand person. And so, that's really one of the most important persons you can have a relationship with in the organization.
Yeah, that's a really good point. On to the third question. We haven't managed to say the word yet. I don't know how. AI. AI. How has that happened? How should the CISO be thinking about AI adoption in terms of its use to secure emerging threats, and then the other side of that coin from an organizational governance perspective?
Yeah, I've sat in, I was at RSA, I sat in, it was AI everything, right? It should have just changed the name of the conference. But it was, every conversation I heard is like, well, here's how we're slowing it down, or here's how we're controlling it in our organization, or whatever. I think you got to think about it the other way. As a CISO, you got to recognize that its approach and adoption is strategic. And so you should be the first mover in helping to understand how to use it and how to govern it. And so the quicker that you dive in and kind of figure out how that works is really important. And we know that there's great applications. I've heard for 15, 20 years CISOs complain about there's not enough cyber talent out there to fill all the roles that I have. Great. You know what? Your level 1 SOC analyst can suddenly act like a level 2 or level 3 with an AI assist. I think too, helping you to prioritize the risks that you have, AI is great for that. Diving through all the threat intelligence data that you have, you have too many IOCs and TTP things, right? It's a great way to slog through all that data and make some really, really good inferences off of it. And I think AI signals the death of SOAR too. I think AI, will be the new evolution or the next gen SOAR, so to speak, where it's, as it becomes more agentic, it's taken over a lot of the tasks that SOAR did. So I really encourage CISOs to, hey, you got to dive in, be ahead of it, figure out how to govern it, and be the one that helps lead the organization into the future where you're secure by design, we talk about all the time. Yeah, really help secure the design and help understand how the continuing ongoing governance around AI is going to go.
That is a great answer. And I always value the way that your lens that you look through cyber, because it's just something that everyone can understand. You make it meaningful for anybody that's listening. So thank you for the time. Guys, if you liked our video, click like and hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for joining.